Hello, Dr. Kevin Bulk back, and now we're going to talk about a theory of language and cognition that's functional contextual, and that means it's looking for things that work. It's looking for workability. It's not looking at right and wrong. And remember, the goal of functional contextualism is to influence behavior with precision, scope, and depth. And so, with this theory of language and cognition, we're hoping that it leads to ways of influencing people with precision, scope, and depth toward valued living. Because remember, that was the stated goal of functional contextualism. And so, let's see if we can figure out how maybe a way of explaining how people learn how to talk and think such that it's useful for creating interventions. And notice how I said that slowly because it's very important. It's not necessarily looking for the exact right way that humans learn language and cognition. It's certainly looking to make it as accurate as possible, but it's always got an eye toward workability. So once we explain language and cognition using this, can then we use that explanation to make things better, to influence people toward better? And that's what we're looking at. So just keep that in mind. And so this is a way of looking at human language and cognition. And the way it starts is essentially you go back and look at a little baby. Maybe you can think back to when you were just born, but I sort of doubt that. But you may have been witness to a baby being born if you're a parent. And of course, if you're a mom parent, you're a witness to birthing a baby. But whatever, the baby comes out, and there we go. For sure, all the five senses are going. They were probably going before that, but we'll just call it at birth, And here's the five senses experiencing going, and the kid, gets to be an hour old, 2 hours old, weeks old, and of course, during all of that time, pretty soon, sounds start showing up. Sounds like I'll put it up here. My brush is messed up. Sounds like mom shows up. I'll put it at mom because it's a sound right now, or maybe mommy. I'm American, so I'll say mommy. So mommy is floating around, and of course mommy shows up in this five senses experiencing world. Warm, fuzzy facial features, color of the hair, length of the hair, how the smell, everything of mommy. And then the sound keeps showing up. And one day, the baby gets it. And mommy shows up in mental experiencing. And it's basically mommy equals all that warm, fuzzy stuff and that person, warm, fuzzy, and that person. And of course, then the little baby finally says, and we'll put it over here in toward, says, mommy as a behavior. And mom, who's around, does a happy dance. Goes, hey, said mommy, and then daddy show up, and then all kinds of words show up. And the basic idea of relational frame theory is this thing down here, is that when this mommy equals warm fuzzy person, shows up, that 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 little equal sign there, which is called entailment, by the way, feels good. It makes sense. You know how it is when things make sense. Even now, you go, "Oh, that makes sense. That feels good." Well, this is that. It makes sense. It gets connection. That connecting, which is called framing, called entailing at first, but eventually it gets called framing. It feels good, and so it's rewarding, and so you keep doing it. So And boy, we all do it a lot. We do a lot, and we develop lots, more words. So it sort of begins with that five senses down here to mental experiencing. Now, eventually, of course, maybe you feel good, or maybe you don't feel so good. A little bit of fear shows up with mom. That happens a lot, so that can get related to mom. Well, that's inside. And of course, happy can get related to mom. We'll put that in the middle. Who knows? Well, you'd want to move toward that. So happy shows up, and that gets connected to mom. Well, those are inside things that get connected. So first the five senses, and then the inside. And pretty soon you have this frame of relation all around mom. And that's, you just heard me say that term, frame of relation. And so it's really, well, the technical name is relational frame theory, which is abbreviated RFT, of course. But it's really a verb, so this should be framing. So it should be, I'll just put the R for relational framing theory, because you never stop. Even now, as I talk, you're framing. You're constantly framing and creating relational networks. Then it sounds a little bit about, that free association stuff that you've heard in the past and all that. But this is, we can take it into the laboratory, and we can have people relate up squiggly lines like that, like this. So we could show this and show this, do it again, and pretty soon the squiggly line equals a plus sign. It's how people learn foreign languages and all kinds of stuff. So relational frame theory, and that's why I went back when I had heard had read the Derived Relational Responding book, which I haven't said that yet, but we'll get to that. I'd read that, and I'd heard people talking about five senses to mental. That transfer is where I came up with that vertical line for the matrix. Over here, I'll go into another word they talk about. So five senses experiencing is transformed onto a word. And let's do that word, transformed. So trans means across. And the form of an object is sort of its shape. You can think of it that way. So we're going across shape. Well, in this case, the shape is five senses. It's not really, it's sort of visual shape, but it has all kinds of stuff. And that is going across this line, basically, right there, going across it, and it's transformed into this language thing. So language comes to represent this stuff, and language also comes to represent these feelings and stuff and urges that show up. And what do I mean? Anxiety. If I say the word anxiety, well, that's a word that you can sort of feel a little bit of tension and a little bit of tight breathing in your chest as I say it, because that's what it means. That's what it equals. And so that's all. So the basic idea is that this stuff gets transformed into this stuff, and people get really good at that. And they get so good at it. I'm going to draw a little bit different part of the diagram here. They get so good at it that you can literally sort of live your life down here in your mind. You can just sit in your easy chair and think about stuff. Think about those good old vacations you used to have, and those loves that you used to have, and all that stuff that you used to have. And you can get to where you're living your life out down there and not paying attention to your current five senses experiencing. And we all do this some. And some people get all the way down there and they really get stuck. But let's say lots of us do this, where we have too much stuff going on down here and not enough here. Well, the idea of ACT is acceptance and commitment training is to make that more equal. The all of this more equal so that you're paying, especially this upper and down thing. So that transformation of stimulus function, that transformation of this is stimulus and the function gets down here into words, can draw us down into living inside of our heads. And Steve Hayes, one of the primary authors of the original acceptance and commitment therapy book, wrote another book called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. And that's what this means. Get out of your mind and into your life. So you can look at it that way. So another part of relational frame theory, RFT, is this thing called derived relational responding. So we all know we can train up, this warm fuzzy person equals mommy. I guess I ought to erase mommy. Or that, let's give you another one. I'll give you one over here. I want to train you and tell you that A equals B. Well, that's actually a training that I just did. I just trained you that A equals B, and you now know that you can write B equals A, and that's the same thing. Because in your learning history, you know what an equal sign is. And you sort of know A and B are just letters in an alphabet. So all of that come together, and I just trained you that A equals B or B equals A. Great. Now I want to train you in something new. Here's a new training. Sorry, started with the wrong one. B equals C. So now you know something actually that I haven't taught you. I've taught you that A equals B, and I've taught you that B equals C. And now you know something. Yes, you know that A equals C. And that A equals C right there was derived, because I did not directly teach it to you. You had to think that up inside your own little mental experiencing here. And that's what is meant by this very complicated sounding term called derived relational responding. Okay, let's divvy that up a little. Responding. Okay, that's either a mental or behavioral response to something. Okay, so the A equals C was initially an internal mental response. And if you said A equals C, that was a behavior, so that it was a behavioral response. Relational, we've already been talking about relation, relata, relating five senses experiencing into words, and then relating internal experiences into words. And then you get this big relational frame or frame of relations, so relational going. And then derived simply means it comes up in your own head. It didn't exist inside your own head before. You derived it. Now this stuff really feels good. It's also abbreviated DRR. And this is the eureka stuff, if you know what that is. Like, it's cool. Like, whoa, wow, even this little bit of A equals C, it's cool. Wow, I figured that out. Derived relational responding, well, you can take advantage of this. In one way or another, for good or for bad. So if I teach you over and over again that Coke is the answer to thirst, and then when thirst shows up, well, and you don't necessarily have a Coke handy, you might derive up all kinds of new behaviors to get yourself to a Coke. And that's exactly what Coke wants you to do. But you could also derive up all kinds of new behaviors to do to move toward getting yourself a girlfriend or something, if we set things up right, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. So you can derive up and have people derive behaviors, derive thoughts, and derive things. And what's the secret of deriving? Well, the secret of it is psychological flexibility. I'll cut right to the chase. The more psychologically flexible you are, that is, you got lots of flexibility here, the more likely it is you'll do this deriving stuff, this stuff, because if you're psychologically inflexible, that means A always equals B and this and that, and you get really tight and stuck, you're less likely to do that. And we've been able to show that experimentally. So psychological flexibility increases the probability. I'm going to do an up arrow and then a psi, that stands for psychological, F stands for flexibility. Increased psychological flexibility, that state increases the chances that you'll derive up new behaviors that are these things that'll move you toward what you need to do. You might even devise up new away behaviors that are more functional for getting you toward also. So you can derive up all kinds of cool stuff. So the basic idea of relational frame theory is that we transform, I should say, a lot of five senses experiencing into mental experiencing. And we can get stuck down there in our minds, living life inside our minds, and that makes us less psychologically flexible. So now we're going to say words at people and show them diagrams like this matrix diagram that hopefully increases the psychological flexibility. And when that increases, and the person knows what they tend to move away from, and the person knows what they tend to like to move toward, they will drive up, come up with, think up, dream up new behaviors that might just get them moving toward valued living. So the whole idea is we're mucking with language. So now I'm going to go back to it. I know I'm a little bit long, but listen. As I say, hi, I'm Kevin Polk, and I work from the psychological flexibility point of view. Stop. What have I, with words, just introduced to somebody in terms of this relation stuff? Well, they've heard me say psychological flexibility, and they know I work with it, so that sort of means I equal the psychological flexibility point of view. And I'm being nice, and I then ask, is it okay if I show you the psychological flexibility point of view? So I didn't order them, I didn't tell them, I ask. And asking also tends to increase psychological flexibility. You know that. If somebody tells you what to do, you tighten up and you're not as flexible. If somebody asks you what you would like to do, then you're more flexible. And of course, everybody says yes, because with psychological flexibility, I've said some sort of interesting words, and those interesting words lead to curiosity. And curiosity is, of course, how people move toward. They move toward to find out, what is this thing called psychological flexibility? So that's what we're getting at, and I'll give you a little bit more here in a second. And so, till next time.